South Africa, it will not substantially reduce the crime rate. And the reason for this is that there have to be certain things in place before the crime rate will decrease. One of them is severe penalties, for example, the death penalty. One of the criticisms that's leveled against the death penalty and against Islamic law as well, or Islamic punishment, is that the death penalty is irreversible. And if a person is wrongly convicted, there's no way in which one could overcome the problem of imposing the penalty. And secondly, why should the courts stoop to the level of the offender by imposing the death penalty?
I speak as a Muslim, and when I speak as a Muslim, I speak from the divine book. And the Qur'an is very consistent. It says, you know, فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when describing or when sanctioning taking a life for a life, which is part of the Old Testament as well, it says that in death there is life. In taking a life, you're giving life. In other words, in taking a life of one person, you're giving life to the rest of the community. So yes, I am a proponent of the death penalty. If a person steals and the person has gone to the court procedure, Islamic court procedure, and eventually he is found to be guilty, then his hand should be cut off. If he's a murderer and is not forgiven by the family, then the Qur'an says his life must be taken.
The crime-inflicted citizens of South Africa are frustrated with the justice system that seems to favor the criminals. This has resulted in people taking the law into their own hands to mete out instant street justice.
People do not have the right to take the law into their own hands. They might have a justification for it through frustration and having a problem with the authorities looking after their interests. They might take the law into their own hands, but certainly the Sharia does not allow for this. This has in fact resulted in kangaroo courts, in necklacing, in community-based organizations springing up, but certainly the Sharia does not allow a person taking the law into his own hand.
The objection raised is whether the Islamic law, which is based on the Holy Qur'an, is applicable to the present era and circumstances. Despite the success in curbing crime, the question raised is, are Muslims looking upon Islamic law as an orphan who desires to survive through prevalent systems of the period?
I think it's to create a society in which people won't be prone to commit crime. This is the first instance. The second instance is that when you do punish, when the society is in a good condition, and you do punish, then the punish should be of a deterrent nature. I don't think we should create prison hotels where it is easier and better to live inside there than outside in society. So there has to be a deterrent nature, but also a system in which people can be embedded, their life embedded and their outlook on life embedded, that they can fit into society in a better way.
When Western ears hear the word Sharia, you know, they cringe because it takes them back to that state in their development when their state and the religion were fused and they didn't want that. So what we're looking at a situation at the moment where post-colonization period, the Muslims are now only coming out of that period. And I think there's a movement afoot now to say that really the Sharia with its laws is actually a system of law which is relevant to contemporary society. It challenges and it has answers for contemporary situations. If you look at the murder rate, if you look at the sexual revolution in the world, and if you look at Islam's answers to these, then you find that that is the answers that the world is looking for.
Yes, there is a direction, a tendency to go there, because it wasn't Sharia law as applied, wasn't something fictitious or in the imagination of historians. It served for several centuries in the past and produced a civilization that made a great contribution to subsequent civilizations. So Muslims throughout the world are conscious of this and they are striving. But it is a question of where they are focusing and which particular aspect of Sharia law they want to implement. It's wrong for states, on the other hand, for states in which they have majority Muslim populations to focus purely on the criminal side or one or two aspects without necessarily ensuring that their political structures first are in place. Because I refer to the paradigm of self-determination, that is the right to responsible political freedom, and where there is a consensus between the ruler and the ruled, not for the ruler to rule, but that both should jointly rule under obedience of the Almighty's laws and commands.
The touch I'm talking about is not a physical one. I'm talking about a touch.
Said to him, brother, do you know what it means not to know the name of God? Do you know what it means?
So to stop drugs, we have to use love, and we have to use compassion, and we have to use hope. The other day, yesterday...
Waste. So once you become a person who studied in Islamic University, you have to be a full-time Islamic worker.
Activist discourse. In Islam, there is a knowledgeable one. So this is why the matter of definition. When we speak about knowledge, when the ulama spoke about the alim, who is the alim?
Important problem. I know that our brothers, wherever they are, who convert to Islam, whether in South Africa or in Malaysia, the Chinese who convert to Islam, they have, by the way, similar problems like the problems I heard this today here. Because in Malaysia, if you
started asking him questions about this, he amazed me. He amazed me. He answered all my, I thought I had bombshells for him. He answered all my questions.
I've really learned a lot in the few days that I've been down here. When I came in here and I found
following the very first command of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Jibreel alayhi salam commanded Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd.